Hello, and welcome back to Parley, the show where you folks support the other stuff I make by paying me monthly to talk about the topic of your choice. And this month, FreeWilliam has done something that hasn't been done so far. People have the ability to spoiler out, like make it a black bar and then I have to click it to reveal the text underneath. So it's invisible until I reveal the spoiler. Not a spoiler like a media reference spoiler. Um, and FreeWilliam asked me if they were allowed to do a parlay that was all a spoiler. So I said, for the sake of clarity, you need to say, like, this is a parlay request. And then if the entire parlay request, after you say this is a parlay request, is like black bars, that's okay. The only catch is if I reveal it, which I'm about to do right now, and it's something that I consider an unacceptable request, you run a minor risk of me you retroactively not doing the parlay. I would say for future proofing, future Zandy, you'll thank me later. When there's more parlay requests, that could possibly cause you to lose your parlay for a month. And I might in the future not be able to say, like, you can just have another one. I would say for these, you run the risk of, I almost never reject parlay requests. So that risk is very low. But you could put me in a situation by doing this where I would have no choice but to not do a request for the month. I highly doubt that will happen. Hopefully just me saying that will make people keep that in mind and maybe play these just a tiny bit. Don't do something that you think is risky as an ask with these, unless you're willing to take the risk, I guess. Let's reveal it and see what it says. It's a Google Docs link. Okay, so I'll click it. This is kind of scary. Okay, it's text. I'm supposed to read it. The document is just called Parley. Let's update the title as we go. I'm not going to center that yet because it's probably going to keep changing. Operator, this Pyrel isn't going to mind itself, Ortis, you say, waving him away. If it did, I promise you we wouldn't be here. As you're saying that, an entire sheet of rock flakes away, revealing a perfectly smooth, reflective surface under it. Fascinated, you reach down to touch it. Operator, no! You feel an impossible sensation like reality snapping into place, and hear a soft pop. The silvery surface vanishes, revealing darkness beneath. The sensation stuns you senseless, and you begin to fall. You have a brief memory of the hole expanding below you while the entire cavern flows like water above you, and then darkness. Ortis? Mom? I'm here, child. Ortis will take some time to get here. Where are we? What happened? That bubble, it was some sort of spherical shield. When you disrupted it, everything it was supporting collapsed. Not much of a bubble if I popped it that easily. I think it was a shield against time. Tenno. Oh. This is old, older than anything I've ever heard of, yet the statue behind you seems decades old at most. You turn and peer into the darkness, managing to vaguely make out what looks like a paw the size of a dropship. A paw? Oh my, says Ortis, finally coming into view himself. He floats up and projects a spotlight, circling slowly around what looks like a kubro the size of an eidolon perched on top of a mountain. Is that... Just the statue, child. It's mostly copper and tin. You pull out your mining laser and start climbing. Why make a statue so big and keep it in a bubble of time? I passed a lot more than just this on the way, operator. I'm afraid it's hilarious. Come look. I think I see, says the Lotus. These poor people. What? It ends. That's it. Oh, there's a note. I think the physics works best if warframes are anywhere vaguely between 6 and 18 feet tall, depending on density and what moves you're looking at. Interesting. Okay. So that's the whole request. A story response? Now we're left to kind of piece it together. Some initial thoughts, since we're just in open territory and I kind of have to figure out what to do the request. It is challenging to decide how to read an unknown piece of work. A lot of the time, a lot more goes into reading prose than one might at first think. It can be difficult to know what tone or like to what degree you should use a different voice for each of the voices. there's this thing in poetry about overreading and kind of masking yourself a bit when you read versus being totally vulnerable when you read. But personally, I think that it's really beyond the ability to do that, where you add back in some, you could say, performance without making it guarded or artificial. Emotionally vulnerable, but still a construction you made to display that emotional vulnerability, if that is the approach you're taking to poetry. A lot of people will clap robustly if you read a poem in a like poetry reading voice. That personally makes me cringe because I'm sick of hearing people say it. I think it sounds highfalutin and showy, and it's just people clapping about something they don't understand. I would make the argument that a lot of poetry, for example, is one of its strengths anyway, is when it can provide emotional communication that allows you to understand, even if you don't understand like the metaphorical devices or whatever used in the poem, or if the poem isn't so highfalutin. That is a preference, but I wonder why people write poems that aren't like that. Just think about that if you disagree. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I think. It's ultimately a matter of opinion. But my point is, I might have read this differently otherwise, but that was my simple attempt. I don't think it's so bad to add some firmness to the delivery. This is Warframe, I guess. It's Warframe fanfiction. I suppose that FreeWilliam wrote. So we have Ordis, who is your sort of ship guidance computer. Spoilers. Not going to explain other things that Ordis is. The Lotus appears to be here, Mom. And then Tenno is your player character. This is written in second person, so this Pyrel isn't gonna mind itself. Ordis, you say, waving him away, blah 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 blah. I find second person interesting, a somewhat unexplored perspective in prose, in my opinion. That was a lot of alliteration. But I'm not really sure where to go from here. It was difficult to keep in my head what this piece of prose is depicting. So let's try to piece that together now. Okay, so we're mining first, and then there's like a smooth time bubble. It pops, and then we fall. And there's a statue that is like a Kubro that is really big. But then there's like there's like time distortion happening. Okay, so at the end, I'm going to read the end again. Just the statue child. It's mostly copper and tin. So this is the big Kubro statue. You pull out your mining laser and start climbing. Why make a statue so big and keep it in a bubble of time? I passed a lot more than just this on the way, operator. So the idea is that there's a time distortion, and it's hilarious, according to Ordis. And the Lotus says, I think I see, says Lotus, those poor people. I don't see. Okay. There's an image attached of a dog statue. Oh, okay. So I think I understand what's going on. Warframe is a mic punching sci-fi setting. And from the operator's perspective, the Kubro is it's a Kubro, but it's a dog. They're just talking about a dog we would be familiar with. Yeah, so basically we're looking way back in time, and it's like at a grave site or like a war memorial is kind of what this looks like, maybe. That's interesting. Delivering it by having the statue at the bottom is good. I have something to say about this method of providing a detail, though. I always bounce off this method of depicting a setting or adding detail to a world because you as the reader, you have to be able to trust that the writer did actually mean there to be some further thing rather than it being like when you say what looks like a kubro, you as the writer have to establish a rapport or trust, I guess, with the reader such that they know you said what looks like a kubro deliberately rather than just saying like it's just a kubro and you can't see clearly, you know? There's this element of the reader needing to know what to interpret and what to take at face value. Otherwise, the reader's attempt to understand might just confuse them. They're not sure whether they're supposed to be trying to understand some deeper meaning or if it's just abstract. Now, FreeWilliam, this is not really a criticism of you. This is just a frustration of the very little I gained from studying English in college, which is that it can take some time in a text to establish these things. Something that I spent a lot of time thinking about when I was studying English writing. I'm in a place where English is a primary language spoken. So when I say studying English, I just mean like studying writing. I studied a lot of poetry and I did a lot of short stories and novellas. And so the question becomes, why do people make longer form pieces of literature, media? And one reason, almost the only concrete thing I feel like I can say is that it does let you establish a lot of rapport with the reader and understanding. You could build those things up and then they know what you're operating on. You can kind of teach the reader a way to consume your piece of writing. So without that, it can be challenging to know, like, are you supposed to take this literally or not? For example, at the moment, I'm just an idiot and I don't know whether this is 6 inches or 6 feet. I think it's 6 inches. Mr. FreeWilliam said, excuse me, I might have said Mr. Foot earlier because I did a Mr. Foot parlay for an hour before this. FreeWilliam said, I think the physics works best if warframes are anywhere vaguely between 6 inches and 18 inches tall, depending on density and what moves you're looking at. I don't know what you mean by what moves you're looking at or density, but the warframes are mini, and that's why the dog statue is really big, and we don't know, but warframes evolved to be really small. I always get nervous when this happens in a parlay because I feel like I'm just totally misinterpreting something obvious, and that will be frustrating for you. But this is, I don't understand at all, so that's the best I can do. But I think this is like a war memorial or something, and they all died or they all got eaten by a giant dog. They think maybe the Lotus thinks that all the humans got eaten by a gigantic kubro. Is that what is occurring here? I don't know. Okay, what do we do from here? I'm not sure. I like the idea of it being a surprise and then kind of responding to whatever I get inside. I hope FreeWilliam, I hope people like this way of doing this. I wouldn't mind more of these surprise ones. Again, I feel like I've sounded defensive about them, but it's because I want to let you do them with some ground rules, you know? Yeah. Warframe lore, right? Yeah. I always find it interesting that literary device of like the sci-fi setting is taking place in the far future of a place that is Earth, and it's in Warframe it's really not ambiguous whether it's Earth, but like what exactly happened on the way to that is kind of unclear. So for example, in Warframe, we have the Corpus, which are human stockbrokers, like evil capitalists, basically, with a lot of robot stuff, tech, and the Grineer, which are a big faction of clones, and the Infested. And I've always liked about Warframe that the different factions are kind of like embodiments of the things that will destroy humanity. And so it's like they all destroyed humanity, the Orokin Empire, I guess, and then became kind of their own sprawling mess of a thing. I think one of Warframe's weak points is that we don't get a lot of what about everybody else? Not everybody is Corpus or Grineer. The game kind of makes it feel like they are. We do in some later story notes, we get, you know, tribes, civilizations that are not Corpus or Grineer, but I feel like not enough. Surely there has to be like lots of people that are not that. Maybe that's just me. There are a lot. You know, we get the Ostrons, we get those people that kind of coexist with the infested in that one quest. We get, obviously the people in Fortuna that I'm forgetting the name of off the top of my head. Anyway, yeah, sure, there are lots of people, but somehow it feels to me like they're just too broad. I don't know. Um, but the idea that those kind of all destroyed human civilization and we don't exactly know what happened. There's a lot of lore in Warframe that you'd have to go somewhere, you'd have to go elsewhere and read that I have not read. Maybe it's actually very knowable, but the point is that essentially nobody has read those things. Some of you listening have, almost nobody among the player base has. So most players don't know exactly how we got from here to there, leaving room for there to be some kind of speculation, like what happened, what was it like. That's interesting, and the idea that you'd kind of squirrel away uh, a piece of history like this, or like a time fossil, a little bit, is really interesting. That the Orcan Empire, I guess us, would have buried a memorial or something in the ground in a kind of temporal bubble, and then this was uncovered. I also I found it very true to Warframe that it was mining at the beginning. You start with like, you're grinding. It's just another day in Warframe. I thought that was cheeky. But yeah, I'm not sure I have a lot else to say. I do feel like maybe I'm missing some big detail. I guess I'll read over it a bit more. Yeah, you pop a time bubble, and I'm not really sure what Ortis and the Lotus are talking about when they say they kind of like looked up, you know? But I guess I'm supposed to be confused and you're trying to provoke me to interpret something. But I think the Lotus and Ortis think that humanity was devoured by a gigantic dog because now humans warframes are like really small, but why? Why would they be though? Is this just a perspective trick? I feel like I want in the text why humanity would have gotten way smaller. Something that did briefly ping my brain just now is that there's some kind of rule of probability that I forget the exact details of that says that if when we find aliens, we would expect them to be smaller and more numerous than us because of the law of averages or something, or bigger and less numerous. I forget one or the other, but maybe that principle, I guess, um, we like evolved to be smaller. I don't know. I'm very lost about that part, so I won't flounder anymore. But uh, I like this statue of a dog that I don't have an easy way to show the audience, but it's a very nice statue of a dog. Um, yeah, these kind of go on an adventure parlay are sort of like a what are those things called? Augmented reality games, kind of, where you follow a bunch of links throughout the sort of physical world. Has this element of excitement to it, so that's an interesting idea. I'd be interested to see what this type of parlay uh, would do going forward. Um, but yeah, I feel kind of bad. I feel like I missed something, but I did the best I could. I hope it was okay. FreeWilliam, thank you for the exciting, mysterious journey. For a little while, we got to dig up a fossil. We got to pioneer a new type of parlay that I we did kind of provoke in the group parlay last month. We talked about different kinds of parlay, ways you could kind of push the envelope, which did prompt some further discussion. So I'm not surprised to see a kind of new type of parlay. But yeah, cool, good. Feel free, by all means, like to do more, different interpretations of this format. I kind of want it to be like you can make your own video a little bit within reason. So, right on.